not even going to try and summarize the monumental impact Final Fantasy VII had on countless lives. The original Final Fantasy VII was a gateway into the enchanted land of role-playing games for a ton of folks. I vividly recall passing around Final Fantasy VII's 3 original PlayStation discs in school, telling classmates of what I just experienced and what was to come. It wasn't just a game, it was an experience. I think for a lot of people, Final Fantasy VII Remake is going to have that same impact. I know what you're thinking, but this really isn't about nostalgia. The remake is a straight-up good RPG that builds off a great foundational story. There's a lot that's changed, and it's safe to say this is one of the most comprehensive remakes ever created. Previously throwaway characters now have motivations and personality thanks to modern technological advancements and a bit of creative storytelling. There's even brand new cast members, several of which slot right in naturally, and a few that are clear sequel bait. But really, it's the atmosphere of Midgar that wins out as the true pivotal character of the remake. Seeing kids frolicking in the playground in the intro that was once barren in the original PlayStation entry gives us new context for the city and the class-based politics that define it. Midgar, which has been ingrained in popular culture for several decades, is more alive than it's ever been. Aerith, or Ares, whichever you prefer, is perhaps the remake's biggest direct triumph, as she gets more of a chance to shine beyond her duty as a healbot that only had a place in select parties. If this was my first time ever experiencing the Final Fantasy VII story, I'd still be enamored by these characters. A lot is also cleaned up with the new coat of remade paint. Cloud's freakouts are a little more grounded and less goofy looking. Even random NPCs speak, and side quests, for the most part, are fun to complete, especially when coupled with an automatic teleport turn-in system. The grunt workers of Shinra are more humanized and less cartoonish, though the latter qualifier still applies for several of the main mustache-twirling higher-ups. The new store also does a great job of channeling the original soundtrack while maintaining its own feel. Like the remade plot changes, some are better than the source material, some aren't. Actually, a lot of it, especially the injection of Sephiroth as seen in the game's trailers, is going to be controversial for purists. But newcomers generally won't care, and I don't either, outside of some issues with a very weird last act. In terms of technical problems, I encountered very little. I noticed light audio issues for 10 minutes, a muted dialogue track that worked after a quick restart, and a few minor pathing issues that cleared up after several seconds. Naturally, everyone will want to partake, not just veterans. For newcomers, Final Fantasy VII Remake pulls out all the stops for making everyone feel comfortable. There's an easy and normal difficulty setting available right off the bat, with a third, Classic mode, that serves as an easy adjacent, allowing characters to attack and defend automatically, while you simply perform commands like a JRPG. If you find yourself in hot water while fighting a specific boss, you can swap your setting without penalty. The chapter-based setup is also extremely digestible, which is going to be give and take if you're expecting a sprawling, open-world complex RPG. More on that in a moment. After a guided intro, the slums of Midgar, where Tifa's bar is located, becomes your home hub. That hub is like a giant wheel with spokes, which lead to side quests and stores to buy stuff from. The end result is more of a hangout Shenmue feel, and I'm all for it. The gist is that you'll do a bunch of stuff on the hub, then go to the critical path objective to select Get to the Mission dialogue option, do a linear-based story section, or 2 or 3, and then return to the hub. I repeat, this is not an open-world game. There's a ton of walking involved, a lot of which is cinematic in nature. And since a lot of you are dying to know, there are no QuickTime events. Near the end, chapter 14 of 18, the game starts to open up more, with fast travel available for that particular hub. From there, the remake transitions into a guided narrative tour for the rest of the experience. While future episodes could stand to be a little more open, especially with a, open world, it fits this portion of the narrative as Midgar to an extent was always like this. Another obvious change is combat, which is kind of like a more restrained and refined version of Final Fantasy XV, or an evolution of another recent Nomura project. Remember when I said that each character has more of a chance to shine earlier? The new combat system also facilitates that. Cloud and Tifa are the close-range king and queen, with Barret fulfilling a range damage role and Ares as the spellcaster. Tifa is arguably the most interesting party member, sporting a fighting game-like skill set with launchers and abilities that combo off each other. Combat is like a mix of an action game and a traditional JRPG. You can move around, dodge, and defend at will, then queue up a menu of commands like magic, items, or abilities that essentially stops time. It's not the most tactical or difficult RPG combat system to master, but there's a lot to like. Forcing players to expend ATB bars, which is built up over time by attacking or taking damage, to use abilities, spells, or items is a smart move. It prevents you from spamming potions or cure spells, putting the pressure on you to act wisely and make every choice count in some of the more complex battles. Most fodder enemy fights aren't super interesting, but fun to play and watch. Bosses, on the other hand, put all of the systems in place to the test, as you need to actually try to follow the weakness and stagger parameters, or you're going to be guzzling potions and dipping into your savings to replace them. That said, even with all that in mind, it wasn't until Chapter 12 that I hit a game over screen. Late game simulators that disallow items or force you into a higher difficulty provide more of a challenge, but that isn't available from the start. Part of the reason I had a smooth experience is because I spent an exorbitant amount of time in menus building my characters. In Remake, you spend SP, earned through battles, to upgrade your weapons, and AP, also from battles, to level up Materia. The former foundation is predicted on buying new stat increases or passive powers through a skill tree, more of a skill solar system really, and the latter allows you to get creative in assigning roles to characters by slotting in different pieces of Materia. Trying to figure out the best possible builds for each party member was a lot of fun. I decided early on that Cloud was responsible for fire and ice, while Barret focused on tanking with damage-drawing support materia and a penchant for lightning to boot. Tifa was my thief with her steel materia always equipped and held up the rest of the elemental bargain with her air and ice magic. Every player is likely going to try something different that works for them. That's how effective the materia system is even decades later. Even if the combat system isn't getting you going, a lot of the emotional narrative appeal of the remake spills through to the combat. Hearing Barret shout the victory fanfare theme song as you rush from fight to fight is enough to make you smile. The key here is that like pretty much everything Nomura does, it looks absolutely fantastic at all times and errs on the side of emotion. Watching Cloud lean back as the slow motion effect pops up and slam a soldier down with a braver slash is stylish as hell. Well, the time has come. At some point we need to talk about the nature of the remake's delivery system. Although this game is technically called Final Fantasy VII Remake, it should probably have the subtitle Part 1. This actually does feel like a full release, but it is only part of the story, with many loose threads hanging by the end. For reference, my first playthrough of the game took roughly 35 hours. And that included doing every side quest possible and exploring every nook and cranny of the map, to my knowledge, as well as maxing out all magic materia. There's a few minigames sprinkled in too, but it's easy to dry that well up as the rewards aren't that hard to earn outside of the late game VR training missions that are meant to test your mettle. I squeezed in another 5 hours and nearly reached a 100% completion rating. Like the story's hanging threads, there is a to-be-continued feel with a few mechanical concepts as well. An endless variety of materia and equipment builds aren't quite a thing yet. Red 13, a fan favorite, is a guest character and not a party member, yet. It's almost all the way there in just about every respect, but stopped short on a few accounts. Now I'm willing to wait for the follow-ups, but it was still worth it to play this remake, first part or not, now. I kind of agonized over giving a rating to Final Fantasy VII Remake. It's going to garner a lot of discussion for people who are both blown away by the new treatment and disappointed by it. And those feelings are not mutually exclusive. After thinking on it for some time and removing nostalgia from the equation entirely, I came to the conclusion that this is a world full of powerful characters and a setting that's worth remembering. Remake or not. But for more written reviews, news, original features, and more, be sure to head on over to Destructoid.com.